Meet Dabney. Dabney is an average American who's watching television right now for entertainment, like most of us do. But how much media, like television, do we watch? The average American spends 4 hours per day watching television. That adds up to over 24 hours per week and a grand total of 1,456 hours yearly, which is over 60 days. And that number in terms of media use is steadily growing.
If you think 50, 60 years ago, you had radio, you had TV, you had newspapers, which were a source of credible, solid information. And now you have so many platforms and so many means of getting information. So we are in a 24-hour cycle of news, information, and entertainment.
People absolutely see more media on a daily basis. Every week, every month of their life, they see more media than they would have in previous generations.
It's like drinking out of a fire hose, they say. You've got so much information coming at you at any one moment. What does that do to you?
So it's clear that people now are using more media than they ever have. But what is all of this doing to the human brain? Let's start by identifying the parts of the brain. The human brain cortex is made up of 4 central lobes, known as the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, and, just behind the cortex, the cerebellum. The frontal lobe handles reasoning, planning, speech, movement, emotions, and problem solving. This section of the brain is indicated in blue. The parietal lobe is associated with movement, orientation, recognition, perception, and stimuli. This part of the brain is indicated in green. The temporal lobe handles memory, speech, and the perception and recognition of audio stimuli. On both sides of the brain, this is indicated in yellow. Last, the occipital lobe handles visual processing, which is indicated in red. Like I said, just under the cortex is the cerebellum, which is associated with coordination of movement, posture, and balance. Mass media mainly affects the frontal lobe and the cerebellum, where the response systems are. Media tends to exploit these response systems. There are 2 systems responsible for response in the brain, the slower analytic reflective system and the fast conceptual reflexive system. The reflective system is the one that handles logic, hence the term reflect. It receives information, analyzes it, and then responds. The reflexive system is responsible for quick, automatic decisions, like in survival situations, hence the term reflex. This system is easily triggered by fear. Media producers abuse these systems using elements that prompt feelings of fear, which in turn cause rapid, irrational responses in the reflexive system. This draws viewer attention, and as the brain is exploited more and more through use of intense, fast-paced media, it will get used to it, making the reflexive system less responsive.
Because it's accessible like that doesn't necessarily mean that I can digest that, and that's the problem.
In addition to modifying the human response systems, mass media tends to exploit the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing and generating emotion. People can tell themselves repeatedly that the images they see on screen are not real, but emotionally, the brain processes them as if they are.
The portrayal is total fantasy, but we begin to buy into it.
It influences how you interpret situations and what you think is likely to be true or not.
It cannot distinguish reality from what is on the screen. Consequently, the brain will store these images in the amygdala, which may cause similar reactions to images produced by actual trauma. Reportedly, almost 60% of individuals found disturbances in their sleeping or waking lives as a result of something they watched before the age of 14, which proves that media influences how the brain reacts to traumatizing images, and that the amygdala cannot determine reality from virtual stimulation.
One of the biggest challenges that people have is information overload. So it's sorting through the good from the bad.
Media use is not often viewed as an addiction, however, it most certainly is one. An addiction to media forms through triggering a release of endorphins in the brain, the body's natural opiates. Other activities that release endorphins include cracking knuckles and strenuous exercise, both of which are habit-forming.
You seek it out because your brain enjoys it.
It's constantly begging me to use it. There's something about technology that just wants us to do more and more of it.
When endorphins are released, the brain receives good, pleasurable signals and seeks to recreate this release. Therefore, the brain will desire to consume more and more media, which is unhealthy, as previously discussed. It leads to exploitation of response systems and decreased ability of cognitive processes. So why do our brains love media? One reason behind the brain's attraction to visual media is the simple attraction to outside experiences and personal appeals.
A lot of really good storytellers are telling stories that kind of dabble in truth and reality, and then you stretch it because it makes the viewer think.
Some people suggest that it's a part of human nature.
Some is just a natural inclination, maybe even a genetic predisposition to be stimulated, to be drawn to certain kinds of visual stimuli, to audio stimuli, certainly different kinds of storytelling.
In general, people love getting to be a part of outside experiences through visual media, which can be an engaging and enlightening source of entertainment if it's controlled and prevented from becoming an addiction.
So I'm not about blowing up your television or blowing up your cell phone, but who's in control?
It's not that we shouldn't watch TV, it's not that we shouldn't engage in media, it's just that sometimes it's more harmful to other people than others. The early stages of development in a person's life is where the effects of mass media are most clearly seen in social behavior. Overstimulation in children is blatantly from fast-paced, rapid-changing visual media. The more fast-paced media a child watches, the higher the risk of having an attention span problem is later in life. Prolonged exposure to fast-paced media preconditions the brain to expect high levels of stimulation in later life, which results in decreased attention spans. Children who use a lot of fast-paced media will come to expect real life to be fast-paced too, which will result in problems with paying attention during slow, quiet activities such as sitting through a lecture or learning a lesson in class. The more television a child watches before the age of 3, the more likely that child is to have attention problems later in life. Actually, for every hour of media a child under 3 watches daily, the chances of future attention problems are increased by 10%. Media also impacts the ways that individuals regard common gender and racial stereotypes in society.
It's very, very subtle and shocking how dramatic some of these stereotypes really come into play. And as we do more and more research in psychology, especially with young children, we find how many of these stereotypes they're exposed to at a very, very young age, whether they are sexual stereotypes or racial stereotypes, where if you continually see one race portrayed in a certain way, if that's the most common interpretation you see in the media, you start to expect that, and you always assume that's the way everybody in that group will behave.
The endorsement of those biases is a problem because the stereotypes enforced by mass media are not reality, but they are anticipated as reality, which allows gender stereotyping to oppress women and men of today's society.
Some of those sexualization messages kind of become what you assume you're supposed to be striving for.
Racial stereotypes are just as exaggerated in the media as gender stereotypes.
Women, minorities, there needs to be the implementation of diverse boards of directors, diverse producers, diversity in roles that actors choose or that actors feel like they have a pipeline to be able to choose from. Because the stereotypes that we portray in the media, although some may think they're connected to the real world, they become problematic, especially for young viewers, when and if that is all you're seeing.
Since the brain processes virtual images as reality, it thus processes fictional, immoral events as true life. This determination, or rather lack of determination, suggests that the brain could begin to decipher immoral, inhumane, fictional events as normal.
What we know from science, what we know from research, is that oftentimes when people make a diet of violence, be it violent video games or violent TV shows or whatever it is, whatever they see that's been mediated, you can become desensitized.
This process is brought on by introducing the brain to a specific image, idea, or experience repeatedly until the individual's reaction becomes less and less severe.
The individuals who would become numb to it were probably different from the beginning. So they were more likely to be drawn to violent types of media in such a way that they stop noticing the violence over time. While other people, every time they see something violent, it's going to jump out at them, and they're really going to notice it in an extreme way. So for some, there's absolutely no doubt that repetition, seeing the same kind of violent ideas again and again, will cause a change in whether they notice it or perceive it, but I'm not sure I think it's true for everybody that way.
Not every person reacts to violence in the media the same way. One person could see a violent film and another see the same violent film, and both of them could have a different reaction. Not everyone is going to be prompted to go out and repeat those actions that they see on screen, while an individual that is subject to being influenced by violence in the media probably has that predisposition in their brain.
But for other types of individuals, they're going to respond, in my opinion, more to the positive messages of media.
Aside from the negative influence of media in the human life, the mass media offers a number of beneficial attributes.
It's like so many other things. It can be really good and it can be very, very bad.
Not only has it become a significant role in daily life, but it has come to compensate for experiences that the brain cannot give itself. The first beneficial concept that the media presents is a basic support for scientific literacy, the understanding of scientific affairs that happen globally, like theories such as global warming and other world affairs. The exposure to different theories and global events such as political elections, foreign affairs, and wars opens an individual's mind and encourages intellectual growth, enabling those individuals to become better citizens who understand the world in which they live. Through media supporting scientific literacy, citizens can make better decisions to benefit the society as a whole, increasing awareness and social discrepancy. An example of this is when Hurricane Katrina hit the U.S. Media coverage was out in seconds, enabling people to give and to help. Another example of this is 9/11. There was media coverage all around for this event, and people knew about it in America just as fast as people knew about it in France. This enables citizens to respond with donations of money, clothing, and food for people suffering, thus supporting social unity. Media also allows us to become more choicey consumers.
Media has opened up the consumer market to a different type of consumer, a consumer who is more discerning, a consumer who is going to go out and look for opinions.
So it's observed that media provides a rich source of advantages for human life. Yet they cannot outweigh all of the negative influences that media inflicts on the human brain.
That's the hidden side of technology. We can never know the implications.
As people become more educated and more knowledgeable about the topic of media and the human brain, I feel that people will become more careful as to how they use media. There is no basic way to make media better. People enjoy it, and therefore people will keep wanting to go back to it.
So I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge to create digital media that doesn't ruin us. For so long, people have believed that TV and the mass media are such a negative thing or a double-edged sword. So it's in the hands of young people like yourself to really be advocates and to take risk when you're producing things, but to also have a conscience about you when you're creating.